I had to re-record this because the first time I recorded it was like 5:30 in the morning, and I was mad. Um, but I did call off today. Called out sick so I could talk about this. I I never said this, so I'm perplexed. I think there's a misunderstanding here.
Okay, that's
You
fine. No,
just
no, that's
had
fine.
Jay on say the opposite. You just
Okay,
disregarded that because you want to keep the narrative that you want to put out.
that's
Yeah, but
fine.
Jay also
Yaya,
said high
Exactly.
level
You're
in
not
Yakin, as
Tekken King,
listening.
right?
always,
I'm just gonna
we
say this
ignoring
out
you
loud
twice.
now.
All right, look.
I never said that. I never said high level was Tekken King. I said because I watched it back, and anybody who wants to watch it, you could watch it. It's at the end of Mike's 11-hour podcast. I'm the last person on for 10 minutes. At first, I thought he gave me 5 minutes, but he gave me 10. He was supposed to give me five. Um, I said I was Tekken King, and I don't know why we gotta have for lack of a better word, you know, a measuring contest to see which rank is higher to determine who gets to have an opinion on the game. Because I wasn't even talking about the balance of the game. I made it very clear that I didn't want to talk about the balance of the game. I was just providing like an optimistic viewpoint. And I get a lot of people don't want to be optimistic. But since we got to bring up ranks and stuff, I opened one of my folders. And from the screenshots folder, I took out the screenshots related to ranks and games. So for Tekken, since it keeps if you notice, it keeps the timestamp. I hit Tekken King 2 months after the game came out, and then got busy because I have an LLC, and I have a relationship with Epic Games for some UEFM maps. I was doing some work for a buddy Joe for So Much Monsters, for game development pipelining, for Substance Painter. I was creating the Python version of the plugin. And I'm a senior web developer for my day job. So I do a lot of stuff that isn't necessarily video games. So yeah, I hit Tekken King within 2 months, and then I started hopping on just to fight my Tekken God to God of Destruction friends in casual lobbies. They would start up a lobby, they would play their characters, I'd play mine, whether it be Jin, Leo, Lee, or Reyna. And Finn, I looked at your Reyna video when I first started playing Reyna, and I quickly, within like an hour of playing her, took her from the ruler ranks to Kishin. I don't think in any way I'm like a bad player that would not be able to have an opinion on the conversation. But yeah, since we want to talk about ranks, yeah, I hit Tekken King very quickly. Tip for comparison: this is my friend, no name Trash Nina. He, I believe, is God of Destruction now. He was Tekken God within like months of the game being out. I play against him pretty often. I used to play against him pretty often. I don't really play Tekken that much anymore. I hop on to see what the season's like, and then I play other games. Um, but yeah, so I think if I could spar against people who are Tekken God to God of Destruction, I don't. I'm not some like bad player who thinks high rank starts at, or high level Tekken starts at Tekken King. And I never said that. If you pay attention to what I said everybody in here is a high level player, and then I quickly after said, so you guys, and get it, you guys. I'm not even talking about myself in that situation. I was mainly talking about the other people who are on the podcast, having the podcast regarding the feedback portal. And I was also just giving my perspective as to why I think either Tekken 9 will come sooner rather than later, or just won't come at all. But yeah, so that's Tekken. Grand Blue hit S rank pretty quickly. Total wins, 100 wins to hit S rank. That did not take me long at all on Narmaya. I'm not sure if I think there was one rank after S. I don't know if I cared to play long enough to hit it. That was in January, but you don't need no time because you can see the wins, 100 wins. Rashid in Street Fighter came out 95-28 for my ranked matches. I hit Master, I think, right after that game. I don't have the timestamp on this one because I took it from a Steam screenshot. So you can see right here, 1500 MMR Master, 6-1 streak. I hit this fairly quickly. I could go to Steam to get the exact date. I believe it was September something for both of these. I don't know. It doesn't say it on here. I'll check in a minute. Deadlock. You can see this one's got the timestamp, 2024. They used to do ranked matches in like a time-based thing, so you had to play 7 to get a rank. I placed Phantom 5, which is, as you can see, ranks really high. This is 2024. this was my win rate the next time it opened from 10-20. This ranked week, out of my games for placements, I hit Phantom 6. This is in a game that most people would consider way more difficult than fighting games because it has fighting games mechanics and shooter mechanics and mobile mechanics. What I was doing on the podcast was just giving my background as to why I'm generally just pretty good at fighting games and games in general. Grandmaster in what is it? 2XKO. This was during the beta. Easily hit Grandmaster. I don't know if I can get my win rate from back then. It was pretty easy. The point I'm making in all this is that... Hang on. Sorry, I had to stop the recording momentarily. Somebody came to do some work on my apartment. But, yeah, I found some other screenshots. Just to go over every game, right, while we're at it. So, for reference, So I used to queue with this dude, Ledkip, a lot. I was Eagle, I think it's Legendary Eagle Master. Counter-Strike, eventually we hit Global. To give you an example of some of the ESEA matches we had, it was usually Ledkip and me carrying the team to victory if we won. Final score 16-12. So Counter-Strike, another game I was good at. Let's go to Marvel Rivals, right? Recent one. Screenshots. If I go all the way down, right? At the start, when I hit, you can see right here, hit Diamond, higher than 99% of players. This is in December 29th. Same day, hit GM, higher than 99.4% of players. What the win rate looks like. At level 40, I'm not playing that many games. 52 hours for GM. Season 0. This is, what was I getting at here? Queued with Oso, help him get the GM. So, the point I'm making in all of this... Oh, it only took me 31 hours to initially get it. Level 36. The point I'm making in all of this is no matter what game you check me at, I'm not somebody who really loses in a dick measuring contest. So I don't get the point why we're having it. Initially, what I was trying to do was make a tool for Tekken players to be able to easily look up moves, find the frame data, create combos, stuff like that. Maybe see a video of the move. This is placeholder, of course, but I wanted a tool that could work with mobile, so it resized automatically to fit mobile. Or if you're on desktop, you could pick your game, pick your character. I'm not sure what characters I added moves for. Some of this is still buggy. Combo builder's a little buggy. Saves it even between games. I don't think I added anything but Tekken currently. Oh, I added placeholders, but this is without the frame data. Tekken actually had the frame data. So this is a tool I was creating. So the purpose, because this isn't something I can use the API for, right? Because the Tekken API currently doesn't have anything for Tekken 8, apparently. But it didn't matter because I could use my own data. So if I used my own data, I would have been able to keep this updated. And this, essentially what happens is I come here, download it, CSV, and then from there, I run this Python script I created, and it turns the CSV into this SQL. Just to show you that I'm not bullshitting. Python main py creates this, running this Python script up here, checking for certain things based on the cell of the table. So whatever the top cell of the table was named. And then I take that SQL, put it in this backend, got all my table definitions, all the stuff that's required. That way I could always set the database up so it's an actual application and not just a static website or a wiki. It could have functionality for the users. Essentially, I just wanted to create a tool I could use while I was at the gym to learn as much about Tekken as possible. And I wanted to be able to allow other people to use it. And in the future, allow people to edit moves or add moves or change the frame data so that I didn't want to charge people for this tool. Because I mean, if I'm just making it for Tekken, sure. But for Guilty Gear, I'd be using stuff like Dust Loop to get a lot of the data. So if anything, it'd be like a one time, give me $5 and tools all yours to create combos and stuff. Just seeing the information would just be free. But I was just trying to create something that I wanted. And I thought Tekken was the game that needed it the most because anytime I look up move data for Tekken, I could never find the complete thing. So yeah, I did all this work, created the front end, the back end, the way to store it and transfer the data from Google Sheet to SQL, stored it in the database. That way I could test to see if the database was set for database migrations. And then made this website where it dynamically gets loaded from that database. Added some features for stuff I wanted to do. Made sure that the inputs were there for the moves. I did all this. And I'm getting told that my input doesn't matter about what I think about the future of the game because I think Tekken King is high level Tekken, which those words never came out of my mouth. I just said that I hit Tekken King rank. I didn't say when I hit it or how easy it was. But I mean, again, based on the screenshot, it seems like it was pretty damn easy doing this with a 9 to 5, you know? So like, I don't get what the point of that comment was, Finn. Especially considering I looked at your video and thought you were pretty informative on Tekken when I started playing Reina regarding her forward forward 2 and how it frame traps into the down forward 3 hell sweep. So I used that to pretty easily sweep my way to Kishin on Reina within like an hour from ruler to Kishin. So again, I don't get what the point of that comment you said was. But yeah, I had to re-record this because initially it was early in the morning and I was angry. But I'll add a few more things and then probably check with Mike if it's cool for me to use parts of his podcast with a video and just upload it because I just wanted to respond to that because I felt it was misleading. I didn't want people to think I was just some random shitter when I'm usually good at every game I play, regardless of how hard people consider the game to be. Okay, this is Sin from Guilty Gear. What I wanted to show now that the rank criteria is out the way is like some development criteria, right? So, Sin from Guilty Gear is a texture-based details character. What I mean by that is if you look, the majority of the character, these details are actually low poly. If I turn off his shader, this is what Sin actually looks like when he's not lit. It's not that high poly. But what happens is this texture map on the left is using vectorized a vectorized texture map to show all the details on Sin. So certain things like this hello, because of where it is on the texture map, it can get pixelated the closer you get to it. But it doesn't matter because you're very rarely in game going to be this close, if ever. But the actual solid colors and the black lines are vectorized. Meaning, if I take this topology, move these up, you can see all these black lines, right? That's because the color that was on that topology was being controlled by the position of these vertices on this texture map. So if I move it across this border, the color information from that border now goes down into the hello sign. So it just looks different. This is what Guilty Gear does for all of their characters. So their characters remain relatively low poly, and the game is light. Even though they're mainly texture based, this texture map, this singular texture map is controlling all of the details for Sin. So this is the base color. So it's 4 different texture maps, but it's only one of each type. So detail, ILM, this is controlling the shading. So the dark spots on the jeans, the dark spots on everything. Shading is being controlled by the ILM, which has 3 different channels, right? Well, 4. The alpha, the green, the blue, and the red. Meaning different things. The type that's the part that's exposed to light, the shine on Sin's cross, his crucifix, for example, and the intensity of that shine. So that's the ILM. SSS is the dark shading. So whatever the ILM affects, the SSS is what that color will be. So like the color on the jeans, for example, the dark shading is from the base being controlled by the ILM. So that'll determine whether the base or the SSS is shown. I believe it's subsurface scattering. I'm not sure. The detail is the little details around scent. So for example, like these blurry parts on his shoulder, the little scratches on his wrist, these little shading lines are being controlled by this detail. And that's the general makeup of a Guilty Gear character's texture sheet, okay? And their overall topology. But the way it's done is so masterful that it still looks really good in game. Even though it's low poly, it doesn't look like it. And I believe they swap a low poly head for a slightly higher poly head for the up close animations during the cutscenes. Next, I'm gonna pull up a character that I sculpted when I was learning anatomy like 3-4 years ago. This is more of an example of topology based details. So here, what was I gonna show? Oh, I can't click it. Here, this redesign. This is retopology over a high poly. High poly is just the sculpt itself. What do I mean retopology? If you look at all these red lines, these are loops for where I want the geometry to be to better control it. Once you set these loops and define them, it's hard for it to lose form in those loops because typically you have polygons that are either 3 or 4 sides, so either a triangle or a rectangle. Everything in game engines gets turned into triangles. Whenever you have a 5-sided vertex like this, one with 5 edges, that's a pole. Wherever poles are, they redirect edge flow. So it makes it difficult for you to, it makes it to where if you try to change that form at a pole, it's like trying to move through mud. The sculpt always tries to retain that shape. So you want to set up your poles in certain places. So like for the face, for animation, you want to set up a pole in an area that won't necessarily deform. So you have loops around the mouth, like so. You have loops around the nostril, you have loops around the eyes. The top of the head doesn't necessarily matter. You don't need like a circular loop around it because it's not going to deform. Likewise with the ear, it's not really going to deform. It'll maybe deform on the edge, but that's usually just a pull or something. You don't need detailed geometry for that. The ear is one of the places where a lot of people hide their geometry mistakes because it'll go unnoticed. So this is more of a animation scale mesh. Not even animation. It's just too heavy for anything really. But this is because it was just a retop on a sculpt. So the actual high poly would be this one, which is even more polygons. I think it's double, if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong. This says 720,000 vertices. This one says 1,400,000 vertices. So I guess the redesign is even higher topology. Regardless, whatever. Maybe I changed. Point being, these are the sculpt level meshes. This body retopo mesh is closer to what I showed with Sins, where there's triangles. You can see some of the detail, but it would need textures to actually be a good mesh, like a good mesh to use for the body. You would actually need to do the texture maps that Sin has to where it makes it look good. And probably comb some normals. But you can still see the majority of the details, even with a significantly lower mesh. This is only 900 vertices, as opposed to 1,400,000 or 700,000. And yeah, that's the. Let me see. Yeah, 1,000,000. That's how games are able to run, because it becomes much more lightweight when you have less topology or less total textures. That's another thing, right? Textures use a lot of memory. So Guilty Gear, even though they're texture driven, they use one texture for the entire character for the most part. I believe Tekken uses textures for the specific details like the veins and stuff. But yeah, so that's knowledge on art, like game art. I also have the environment file that I made for the training grounds. I sculpted some trees. That sounds weird. I sculpted some trees, some grass, some rocks. So rock I made for an environment. Tree I made. The reason it looks like this is because when you put it in the engine, the cards in the engine actually make these squares look like leaves. So for each individual square, I can generate a bunch of leaves, and then it looks like an actual tree. And then, of course, you got the grass. There was some cool stuff I did with the grass, removing all the shadow from it to make it look like actual, like, Zelda grass in the engine. So this is my knowledge on game art, okay? Outside of the work I also did on the So Much Monsters Substance Painter plugin. So now let me show you the in-engine prototype I was working on. So this is Unreal, and this prototype has, here's the code for it. This code that I wrote, it's using the gameplay ability system, which I believe is what Tekken is also using. So it uses input tags, just gameplay ability tags in general. They could be input, they could be whatever. Tags are just used to kind of control the logic. And then I believe, so typically you have like character files. So you probably have either a base character file or a bunch of character files per character in the game. So like an Armor King file, a Leo file, etc. And in these files, you would have all the functions they can do. The actual controls would be probably in a player controller. So like this is an example of, where is it? Player controller on the right here. So in this player controller, there's movement functions, there's jumping functions. Yeah. And then, yeah, there's a bunch of stuff. But point is, when you actually take this into the engine, right, there's coding you do in here, and then that stuff. So, like, let's look at a header file, for instance. If I look at this anim instance header file, B is accelerate. These are all the function definitions for the anim instance. In the engine, we have this anim BP. This anim BP uses that anim instance, and it's exposed to certain things. So in the, where is it? Class settings, no. Anim graph, anim BP. What am I looking for? Let's see. Animation. Fire rate, reload, montage. Those are montages. Huh. I was looking to see what was exposed. Anim graph, event graph. Where's the event graph at? Here. Yeah, so here we have the notifies. So this is saying, essentially, the anim graph is like a bunch of state machines that controls how the animations blend into one another, right? So if I look at equipped and standing, these are the rules on how these different things blend into each other. So for standing, there's this slot for a dodge animation. That dodge animation is this in the montage. You'll notice this dodge has a what's called a notify, anim notify. It says dodge finished, notify. When it gets to, this is how like fighting games or any game would typically make their move cancelable. So when it gets to this point in the animation, if they receive an input, you can then cancel whatever previous animation you were doing. You create these notifies. So you could add them, you could add a notify state, you can manage them, you can determine how you want to program the notifies in the code and where you want to place them in the animation in the engine. If you want to tweak these animations, you can open the animation itself and change the frame count on the animation. So I could trim some of these frames. So I could remove frame. So right now, when it plays, it goes through all 14 frames. I could remove, let's say, frame 0 to 4. So now when it plays, it's like he's already been dodging. I could also just remove frame 7 to 12. So now he's always dodging super fast. So now it's only a 5-frame animation. Fighting game stuff. You can remove specific frames, you can take portions out. That's probably what they did for that last set of moves that everybody said was reused assets. This is likely what they did. So when I talk about knowledge in fighting games, or in games in general, I'm not speaking out of my ass. But if you notice, a lot of the stuff I'm showing is not the code itself. So likely, the code itself, since it's done in UE5, if they made a Tekken 9, it would also be in UE5. They could reuse a lot of these classes, a lot of the character files, a lot of the setup, the player controller, etc. They also have a lot of art assets. These assets are just, what you call it? They're map assets, right? They could reuse these map assets. As long as they migrate stuff properly to a new project, they could already be working on Tekken 9. And it would be easier than trying to remove heat at this foundational level because they would be able to look at everything from the start. Instead of compromising their existing project files on their locals for Tekken 8, they could have a fresh slate with Tekken 9, import over what they need to, go from a foundational level, remove heat from everything, and create a new game. And at the same time, balance it by changing the animations and stuff. But the art assets, they already have. Because again, if we look at animations, these animations can be retargeted. This dodge, if I create a skeleton, so where is it? I have a retarget somewhere. IK retargeter. Let me look at all of them. Yeah, so you can move animations from one mesh to another if you retarget it. So if they have a bunch of human characters in Tekken, they might use the same rig. That's probably why the Anna bug happened, where she was able to take other characters' movesets. She probably got her ability tag swapped with another character's ability tags through some bug in the code, and then the skeleton is the same, so it won't cause an error. She'll just be able to use their animations. Except this doesn't work when the character is like a kangaroo or something with an extra bones like a tail and stuff. But yeah, the point I'm getting at in all of this is that if they've already done all this work for the visual fidelity of the game, they can reuse it in a Tekken 9 because, again, these are U assets. As long as you export as long as you export all of the required U assets that are referenced, you can export a U asset. For the abilities, they also have U asset files, blueprint classes, etc. This is the one I'm using to fire the weapon in game. So in game, when I have these two clients, sorry, it's taking a second to load up. When I'm firing this weapon, and you're seeing my character's handshake with the animation, that this entire thing, the weapon firing, the animation when I zoom in, the dodge, which is currently broken, it doesn't have a weapon equipped animation, so he's just sliding backwards. All of this stuff is able to be exported between different Unreal Engine projects. So that's why I said I think Tekken 9 is closer. It is more likely to be sooner rather than later, especially if Tekken 8 is currently failing. So if you want changes done to Tekken 9, you should probably use the feedback portal because that's probably why they created it. That's probably why they're hiring for a fighting game right now. They're probably trying to salvage Tekken, not with a new season, but with Tekken 9. Because even if they even if they add more characters per season, like say they add Kunimitsu, say they add Roger, say they add Bob, like they're going to do, all of those will be up-to-date U assets in Unreal Engine, right? They'll have the project files, the OBJ files, the sculpt files, whether it's ZBrush, whatever they use, the ZPR, whatever, for the assets outside of the engine. And then they'll also have the U asset files in the engine. So they have full control over it because they created it. It's a Bandai Namco property. So the same way that Harada was mentioning Soul Calibur might not be a thing in the future because of how poorly it did before. I believe Harada said that because Soul Calibur 6 was a commercial failure that didn't retain any players. Tekken is a Bandai Namco property. Bandai is quick to release games for anime games every year just to keep the license. If they want to salvage Tekken or just get another wave of $70 purchases, they'll just create Tekken 9. is my thought. Or they just never create Tekken 9 and keep doing the seasons with Tekken 8. If they don't want to split the player base between 8 and 9. It depends on what they want to do. But I think if they release 9, they know that the same way people went from Tekken 7 to 8, they'll go from 8 to 9. Although 8 to 9 likely wouldn't be a big graphical jump. So that's yet to be seen if it's true. If people would really jump shit. But with the reputation of 8, they probably would. But that's the only thing I was saying. That's all I was saying. I wanted to provide this information from my knowledge, but this isn't something I can provide in 5 minutes. So I don't like that I got like scrub checked for my rank when I'm good at just about every game I play. I'm good at everything I try to do, whether it be development or some art aspect of any game development. Because this isn't even showing the environments I was working on. I showed the Blender version of some of the assets for the environments I was working on, but in Engine it looks a lot better with material assets. Let me see if I got any material things to show what they are. So this is an example of a material. So it's a lot of node work, okay? There's textures and stuff. This is one of the default ones for the Unreal Engine. But again, this node work is all work somebody has to do when they want to create a new map in Tekken. So a lot of the Tekken maps from Tekken 8, since they already created them, determined the lighting and all that, they would probably just port them over to Tekken 9. And it's just a U asset. Instead of having to redo all of this, you just export your U asset, okay? You already have the asset because you created it for Tekken 8. That's what I was getting at, is that Tekken 7, they couldn't necessarily do this going from 7 to 8 because they were going for an upgrade in the engine. So they were going from Unreal Engine 3 to Unreal Engine 5. And they were also, so that means they likely used the gameplay ability system. They likely redid a lot of the way the materials work because Unreal Engine 3 is a big difference from Unreal Engine 5. Unreal Engine 4, not so much. 3, yes. I believe Guilty Gear Strive is Unreal Engine 4. A lot of the things you can do in 5, you can do in 4 if you're not trying to use nanite or any of the lumen lighting stuff. So, again, this is the knowledge. So I was trying to just get the high-level players, without referencing myself, because I wasn't, the high-level players in that call to try to come to some agreement on what they would like to see in a Tekken 9 or what they would like to see in a future balance update. Because, Finn, you couldn't agree with nobody else on the call. I mean, maybe a couple people, but there was people on the call who were clearly got a destruction rank, who you clearly disagreed with. There's probably people in the professional scene who clearly disagree with you, who you clearly disagree with. Main Man's the biggest content creator for Tekken. Need disagrees with him. I don't know if they like each other. I think they respect each other, but the point I'm making is everybody at a high level disagrees. So how would anything that you guys want show up in Tekken 9 unless it was just happenstance? Because obviously, if the developers are dealing with all of this, because I've gone through 20 minutes of video just explaining what some of this development work is, then they're not going to be able to do all of this and balance Tekken 9 unless they get quality feedback in that portal and not some random people yelling at them on Twitter. If you're dealing with a bunch of different stuff coming at you on Twitter, you have no way to quantify what people are actually saying. If you have a portal where you have all of the API calls for when that information was stored and what was said in that information, then you can kind of quantify it and see what direction you should move in. That's the point I was making. So the next time you say, well, hey, Jay thinks high level Tekken is Tekken King. I never said that shit. That was my point. I think I just woke up my son, so I'm going to give him a bath, cook some food. Yeah, try to get over this minor cold I'm feeling. All right. I don't have any personal thing against you, Finn. I just thought, I watched some of your videos in the past. I thought you were informative. I didn't think I would get scrub checked by you. That was a little weird for me.